Hey, everybody. Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Along with my partner, Chris Hennessy, I'm Dylan Balsamo, keeping you going during this 11 p.m. hour. But right now is a very special time in the show. We are joined by the executive producer and an on-air personality at all the handful of podcasts at the New York Post, including Amazing But True with Nelson Figueroa, Gangs All Here with Brian Costello, and, of course, the Blue Rush Giants podcast. Please give a warm welcome to Jake Brown. Hi, how's it going, Jake?
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on the show.
Pleasure to have you. So I want to start with just going through your Twitter as I was maybe 10 minutes ago for the ninth time. The first thing that comes up, and you retweeted it quite a few times, was what you were saying after Steve Cohen's first press conference with the Mets. And specifically what you said was that this is the best time ever to be a New York Mets fan. I think I got that pronunciation right. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, thank you for emphasizing. I retweeted a few times. I thought it was pretty good. So obviously, I showed myself some love. It came in the moment. I didn't write it. I was just like, I just need to let this out. I needed to release it. It was just like a feeling of joy that you haven't had as a Mets fan in so long because there's competent ownership now. I mean, there's no better time because you saw the vision that he set out, and that's exactly everything that you've been hoping for years from this franchise that you just never got. So not even just in terms of spending money, in terms of treating everyone A to Z the same and putting money into promotions, putting money into analytics, putting money into the minor league system, putting money into ticket sales and stuff like that. And I think it's important to treat everyone like that. And I didn't feel the organization was like that at all with the Wilpons. So I had to let out a little passion that I had inside, and hopefully in 2021 we'll be back at the stadium so we can see all these things come to fruition in person.
Are you prepared to temper expectations for this offseason for Steve Cohen, or are you you want everybody and anything you can get your hands on?
Not everybody and anything, but I think they have the advantage this off season because a lot of teams are cutting costs because of the pandemic. A lot of teams who had no fans don't have the luxury of $14 billion net worth. So there's a lot of teams who are struggling out there who's saying, we got to sell off this guy. Look at the Cleveland Indians. They're thinking about moving Lindor. They're thinking about moving some guys. And there's going to be a lot of teams in that position. The Mets are not. So this is an off season where they could not get guys in the low, but they have an advantage to if they could throw out a little bit more money than some of these other teams, they can. And, you have Cespedes coming off the books. You're not paying David Wright anymore. You got all these contracts that are coming off the books. Wilson Ramos, these guys, you can afford them already. And now you add in this injected boost of cash flow, and now you can. So I wouldn't say spend like a drunken sailor, like he said. I said on the podcast, spend like a 6 to 8 beer in sailor. Like spend like a tipsy approaching drunk sailor. And I think that means, you could get 3 guys. I don't think it's out of the realm to say, yeah, maybe they can get Real Muto, Springer, and Bauer, and then fill some, cheaper pieces elsewhere. But it's not something you got to worry about. It's not, you don't have to go out and get the guys and the scrap heap guys at the end of their careers anymore. Now you can go out and get guys like these guys who are in the prime of their career.
Something that stood out to specifically me, but I'm sure for everybody in that press conference, was he gave a timeline. He said 3 to 5 years he wanted to win a championship by. He said if he didn't, it would be disappointing. Is that a realistic timeline, or is that just him being a wishful thinker?
I think it's unrealistic because I think they can do it in 1 to 2 years. I think this team has the pieces in place already. You might call me crazy. They have so much youth in place, and you still have the prime of Jacob deGrom, where why can't this team have a great offseason, be a contender next year? I don't see why not. They were a couple games, they missed this year, but, this was a weird year. This year you kind of throw out the window. I think there's pieces in place. You add a couple of guys. This team isn't far off. I mean, we saw shades of them being a potentially great team this year, and they were missing some starting pitching. So if they could fill these voids, I'm not waiting 5 years. I think this team, 1 to 3 is a better window in my estimation that this team can do it. And remember, the Dodgers have all these guys. Like some of these guys the Dodgers have, like a Seager has 1 year left on his deal, so we'll see if he even comes back. They're going to be losing some guys in free agency. Justin Turner, we don't know if they bring him back. So I really think the Mets, 2021 may be a little crazy, but I think 2022 could be the year we look at as maybe the Mets win a World Series.
I want to switch gears and to the other side of the river and Dylan mentioned the Gangs All Here podcast with Brian Costello. That can't be very much fun.
No.
So record right now. I am a Jets fan, and as pessimistic as they come, as you could probably imagine, give me a reason to watch. Give the Jets fans a reason to watch the next 7 games.
Oh man, that's tough. Well, for the people of age of this show, I'd say you need a drink with you. But I think if Darnold plays, he gives you a reason to watch. Listen, I don't think he's going to be back. The issue is if they don't get the number 1 pick, that makes you think, hey, if we get number 2, do we trade it and keep Darnold? I know he hasn't had the pieces around him, but I think he's shown us he's not the answer. But you have to watch him because his trade stock, if you're moving him, is at an all-time low right now. So he needs to have a good stretch of games here just to have, any kind of trade value. Hopefully you could get like a 3rd-round pick, something. Because I'm hoping they don't have to trade him for a 7th-round pick, 6th-round pick. If that happens, then that's really unfortunate. It's really just purely wasted years. So I'd say Darnold. I say Denzel Mims has looked nice. I think if he can develop some chemistry with Darnold, or I guess Flacco out there, whoever they throw out there, we'll see if they even play Darnold. If they might rest his shoulder. I would do that. I mean, in Gangs All Here, I might have a rap this week. I might do a rap. Like I'm thinking about writing. I sometimes do a rap on the show, so I might just write a Jets rap. Trying to keep people entertained on this show is very tough when you're 0-9. But Darnold, I think Mims, I think Crowder could be a piece of this future. He's a guy to watch for with Darnold as well. Quinton Williams has progressed. I think he's the guy who you look at a handful of players who are part of the future. It's Quinton Williams is one of those guys. Ashton Davis, another young player on the defense to look to. He's been aggressive. He's been good. He's been a special teams guy. So you have a couple of young pieces to watch. And, in the end, you got to watch for them to lose. I mean, you're watching, hoping that they don't edge out these games like they almost did against the Patriots. You got to just hope they lose, because the difference between, I think Lawrence is much better than Fields, and I think Lawrence is better than anyone else they're going to get, that you really have to focus on at the most winning 1 game, because the Jaguars' schedule is brutal, and I think the Jaguars could very well go 1-15. So you just got to hope to lose. So I'd say watch to lose at this point.
Jake Brown of the New York Post joining us here on One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. And staying on the topic of the Jets, if you're a Jets fan, and I'm sure there are many listening, what is the timeline you can expect for this kind of team to be good? What can they expect for the next few years? Does it rely on that 1st-round pick?
Well, I won't give the Mets timeline of 1 to 2 years for the Jets.
I'd say probably like 5 years. It's going to be a while. I think in 2 years they can compete. It all depends on, how this draft works out. What happens in free agency? Do they spend all the money that they had? Remember, they had $30 million under the cap this year. Will they use that money? They're missing pieces everywhere. You look at the position, they're missing something. So I think they have to put money in every position. They really got to build that offensive line. I know they tried this offseason, and it's working okay, but you still got to put another piece or 2 in that O-line. You still got to address tight end, because Chris Herndon hasn't been the guy. You have to address receiver. Cornerbacks are brutal. You got to get cornerbacks. You got to get linebackers. You got to get pass rushers. So it really depends on what Joe Douglas's approach is in terms of spending. If he goes, he might have to spend like a drunken sailor, because there's just so many holes that he's got to use all the money. He didn't this year, and I think he knew that this team was far away. But, if you want a quarterback coming in here, you need him to have pieces. Darnold, they kind of did him dirty. They didn't give him enough talent, and I think that hurt his career, and I think we know that. But I think you got to give a new young quarterback the pieces. You got to give him the right coach. You got to give him the right system. And you can't fail another young quarterback. We've seen it far too many times. So I'd say, spend money, do it wisely, but, spend a lot of it. And I'll say 3 to 5, they will be a contender. A Super Bowl contender, probably not. But I'd say they're a playoff contender at 3 to 5.
Do you see – I am asking this fishing for the answer I hope for. Do you see any chance Adam Gase is the coach next season?
If he is, I might jump off my rooftop. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think so. I think he's a bum. He stinks. There was no reason he should have been brought here in the first place. I thought it was a terrible hire. Making the playoffs once with Miami. Look at what everyone's doing since they left him. Devontae Parker's been great. Ryan Tannehill made $1 billion with Tennessee. He's making money. I thought it was a bad hire. And, he's lucky to have made it this far. I mean, there's been week after week. You're like, how is he not fired? How is he not fired? It came to a point.
How is he not fired?
Well, it came to a point on the podcast I can't even address it anymore because it's not happening. And, Kaz is not a supporter of him, but he's under the assessment of this team's not going to improve if he's fired. To me, it's more of a principle thing to the fan base. And obviously we're all screaming, how is he not fired? And I agree. And I think a big factor that plays a part in this, guy, is that there's no fans. There's no one to boo him out of the stadium. And I think, he has no pressure to fire him when there's no one there. So I think I think if they do it, it's going to be maybe in December to get a head start on a coach. Ideally, I would not want to wait till Black Monday to do it after the season's over, but it would be a shocker. And I think there would be outrage. There would be riots if he is somehow back here as head coach. And listen, I thought he should have been fired probably after that Denver game was the perfect time to do it. You can argue it was early in the season, but how you lose to a team that bad with a third-string quarterback when you're winning late in the game, they find new ways to lose every week. He stinks. And, we'll see where they go next. The hot coordinator is the enemy. I don't even know. I wouldn't even mind if Harbaugh came back to the NFL and the Jets went with Harbaugh. I'd like a guy with experience and a guy who's proven himself. Even Bieniemy to me has proven more than Gase has because he's won a Super Bowl as an offense coordinator with an offense that lights up the world. I mean, Adam Gase, you could call him a brilliant offensive mind all you want. He is not. That was just false. It's wrong. And just because Peyton Manning said something good about him doesn't mean he's a brilliant offensive mind.
So let me ask you, because you also do the Blue Rush podcast about the Giants. And, the Giants aren't having that great of a season either. While they may be kind of close in contention, we'll say, they are still 2-7. So is it something in the water in East Rutherford right now? What is going on?
I like the Giants' prospects a little more. I think they have been at least interesting to watch. They're staying in games. Daniel Jones' mistakes cost them. You see when he doesn't turn the ball over, they can win games. That's been the key. I think they're treating the rebuild a little bit better than the Jets are. And I think you see talent in that defense. The defense has played well at times. We had Blake Martinez on the show, and this guy is a true anchor to that defense. You talk about a Dave Gettleman signing that he got right. It was Blake Martinez. The cornerbacks are an issue, but Bradbury's been good. But outside of that, Logan Ryan's corner/safety. Jabril Peppers is finally starting to step up a little bit. There's pieces you can look at there. They could use a bit better of a pass rush. I think if they could get an elite pass rusher this offseason, that'll help the defense a lot. Evan Ingram is just the big conundrum. Like, what is Evan Ingram? He drops so many balls, but he's got so much talent. He's a good pass blocker that you just wonder what Evan Ingram is. If he actually caught the ball and put everything together, he could be a great tight end. Receiver, Slayton's kind of emerged as a guy. Obviously, without Saquon, that hurts a lot, guys. I mean, I know Gallman's looked good, and Alfred Morris has shown – I mean, you forgot Alfred Morris was in the league. I know he's shown signs. But without Saquon, it's hard. And I know Saquon struggled a little bit rushing, but I think the offensive line is coming to its own a little bit. I know it's weird how they're doing it with guys rotating and Lemieux in there and Pert in there. But I would love to see Saquon behind this kind of improved offensive line, and hopefully next year you'll see that. But the big answer is Daniel Jones. I think he shows us the signs he's potential of being a franchise quarterback, and then he shows you signs of not being that guy. So over these last 7 games here, we have to see what Daniel Jones is. I don't think they're going to give up on him, but we need to see him, like last game, not turn the ball over, know when to throw it away, know when to take a sack, know when to hand it off. Just make the right decision. And if he does that, I'm not as worried about the Giants as I am worried about the Jets. The Jets have holes to fill everywhere. The Giants have at least guys you could say, okay, he's a player for the future. He's a player for the future. He's a player for the future. So I know it's ugly. It's hard to watch, but it's crazy enough. Giants win against the Eagles Sunday, and they're in the midst of a race. And that really just sums up 2020 for you at 3-7, that you're in the thick of a playoff race.
Well, and to your point with the Jets, the opposite of the Jets, they have a coach in place who certainly looks like he's the real deal. Do you see any chance? You mentioned Daniel Jones showing signs of the good and the bad. Any chance they draft a quarterback? If they kind of lose out, they're 2-14, they're in the Justin Fields race-ish. Do you see any way that they go away from Jones this offseason?
That's a $64,000 question, right? I think if Fields is on the board, maybe. If not, I think they go more of the veteran quarterback, and they're going to give Jones another year. I don't think they're writing him off. I think he's shown enough where he's probably going to get another year. If Fields is there, that changes things. I don't think the Giants are going to be that bad. Honestly, the Fields will be there. I think they're going to win 4 or 5, maybe even 6 games. Sadly enough, if they have won these close games, they'd be really in the thick of. They'd be in first place essentially.
Yep.
So they've showed us that they're right there. So I don't even know if they're going to be in that top 4 or 5 pick range, depending on what other teams do. I think Jones gets another chance. I think they go the veteran quarterback route, trying to bring in a good veteran. I mean, is Colt McCoy really a great veteran? I don't dislike Colt McCoy, but he's Colt McCoy. I'd like them to maybe see, I can't think off the top of my head, but a veteran who's proven something in the league that they pick up. Maybe
Fitzpatrick-esque.
Yeah, like a Fitzpatrick, maybe even Jameis Winston, if he were to be available, if the Saints don't, turn the keys over to him. I doubt that's going to happen. Breeze still shows us he's got a couple more years, and they have Hill as well. So I'd like them to see a Winston Fitzpatrick. Listen, I think Jones, it's 1 week great, 1 week not. 3 weeks bad, 1 week good. So it's really weird, but it's going to be these 7 games that really are the true test. But I think they love him, and I think he's going to be the guy next year, kind of no matter what. But again, you need to have competition for him. That's the key. They haven't done that for Darnold either. They had the backups behind Darnold, let's be real, have kind of been bums. I mean, the fact that Luke Falk got to start, not that no disrespect to Trevor Siemian, but you can't have competition and say it's Trevor Siemian. I know you had McCown at times, but McCown has been a career guy who's made money off being a backup that's filled in a couple games here, a couple games there. They haven't brought in a really good backup, like a Nick Foles kind of backup that could really push him to the test. And I think that's important in this league because you see with Darnold, all these injuries that have mounted. With him, every year he's had an injury. He had mono. He hasn't played a full 16-game slate. And I think it's important. I know there's not a lot of them out there, and that's the issue. But backup quarterback, these guys make a lot because it is important when they step in, especially if a team's doing well and they come in and fill the void. That's an important position. So I'd like to see the Jets and Giants both address that this offseason.
I want to ask you very quickly about your craft, we'll say, of podcasting. Because, just recently you had Brandon Jacobs on the Blue Rush podcast to talk about Super Bowl 42 a little bit. So that's a pretty high status interview, you might say. But the podcast form, as we know it, is rather laid back in a way. So how do you go about preparing to do an interview like that in a podcast?
I like to have fun with the guest first. If you listen to the show, I kind of set it up. I do the grand introduction for the guest, and then we rotate around questions. We have like a thing like this, a Zoom. It's called Squadcast, where we look at each other, communicate. You go when Lawrence Tynes goes, we put up the L for Lawrence. It's me just putting a loser on his forehead like I'm in Smash Mouth. But we have fun, and I think we all get along pretty well. And we try to, spicing up Paul Schwartz a little bit. He's the older guy, the veteran. He's a writer, so we try to make it a fun show. But really, I've always been built off preparation. I've been hosting podcasts in some sense. I think it's so important to be prepared for your guest and read stuff about them, Google them, see what stories that have been in the news with them recently, where they've addressed certain things, address that, interesting storylines about their life. Go through their Twitter, Instagram, see what's going on with their family. I think these guests appreciate when you know things about them. They love my introductions. I call it their eulogy. I say, we'll read this to you when you're dead in 40, 50 years. Whenever you die, I'll read your eulogy. And they say, all right, they want me to, I'm like their bar mitzvah hype man. Party Hardy Hits Volume 42. It's like now what I call music. I kind of just do that for them, and they like that. And that's what starts the interview lighthearted. Plus, a lot of these guys were teammates with Tynes, so they already have that relationship. We asked them to tell a story about Tynes. What was he like? And it's already built. That show is great because it's built off the friendship and the teammates with Tynes and winning Super Bowls with him. That guests will open up. They'll say how it is, and we've had such a good Rolodex. I mean, we started off with Tracy Morgan as the first guest, so we came out with a bang. We're eventually probably gonna have Michael Strahan on. He's just got 1,000 jobs, so he's hard to get a hold of at this point. But I think kind of making it fun and not just always just sticking to football and stuff. Do the other stuff and you want to start them light, and maybe you save the hard-nosed stuff for a little bit later. That's something you got to learn early on in the industry. Just save the knuckleballs for later in the interview once they're lightened up. But just preparing well. I say the key first one is preparing, being passionate, having fun, making them laugh. All my guests, I try to make them laugh in some way. Tell a joke, do something, make fun of myself, call myself fat, talk about being bald, something. And they eat that stuff up. So just have fun with it and be prepared.
Wonderful. That's Jake Brown, executive producer and on-air personality of Podcast at the New York Post. Thank you so much, Jake, for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.